How is everybody?
Cold.
Cold.
Warm.
Y'all have to bear with me this morning. It's been a while since I've done this, so I'm a little bit nervous this morning. So, what I want to try to talk about this morning, a little thought that came to my mind, and then Chris hit on it just a little bit last Sunday, and it really kind of confirmed it. This is what I needed to do. I kind of found myself asking the question, who or what is guiding us in our everyday life? You know, we all tend to put things before God. We all do, whether we want to, whether we mean to or not. You know, and I've just wrote a list of a few things that, you know, sometimes I personally and maybe some other people in here put in front of God, not meaning to, but it's just kind of come to my mind as I was trying to read and study and pray about this. One of the things is family. You know, how many times have we put family before trying to listen to God and His guidance and what He's telling us to do? You know, and we find ourselves saying we can't because of this, or because I don't want to move, or because I don't want to sacrifice time with my wife or my daughter or whatever, you know, and we find putting ourselves before, our family before God, you know. Another thing that I know we probably all use is our job. You know, how many times do we put our job before God's guidance? You know, God's telling us, you know, hey, you need to go and help with the men's missions team Saturday. And in the back of our mind, we're saying, I can't, I got to work. You know, or He's telling us that we need to take off time and go on a mission trip somewhere. And we're all afraid to because of our job. You know, I look at that as we're putting our job in front of what God's telling us to do. Another thing I came up with was ourselves. Selfishness, you know. Come on in. How many times have we just plainly looked at God when we know He's telling us to do something? We plainly looked at Him and just said, you know, I don't think that's what I'm supposed to do, and just not do it, you know. And the biggest one of all is, and it kind of ties in all these together, and that's just Satan in general, you know, putting thoughts in our mind, convincing us, as God's trying to guide us in a certain direction, He's convincing us to steer off that path for whatever reason. He's telling us to go this way, and if we're not strong enough and prayed up enough, then it's very easy for us to get veered in the wrong direction. I've got a few verses. It's like I told Brian over just a minute ago, this is a lesson that could take 10 minutes, and it might take 20 minutes. It just depends on how it goes. First verse I want to read is in the book, the Psalm 48.
Psalm 48, right?
Yeah, Psalm 48. It's going to be verse 14. And the Bible reads, for this is God, our God, forever and ever. He will be our guide, even unto death. You know, to me, that's one of them verses that's clean cut, no having to break it down, this, that, and the other, plain and simple. He is our God if we've accepted Him forever and ever. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. And He's going to be our guide unto death. So how much more clear can it get? But He's our guide. That's just how I looked at it. The next verse I want to read, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on it. It's going to be in the book of Isaiah. Excuse me. Chapter 58. Everybody finds their place. It's going to be verse 11. Excuse me. And the Bible says, and the Lord shall guide thee continually, and satisfy thy soul in drought, and make fat thy bones, and thou shalt be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters never fail. When I read that verse, something just told me that I needed to stop on that verse for a minute and kind of look at it and break that verse down a little bit more. The first thing I noticed, it says, "And the Lord shall guide thee continually." Well, the way I look at continually, that's never stopping. It's just a continuous flow. God's guidance is always going to be there. That's just how I broke that down, and that's the way I feel that it's meant for us to break it down. It's just another verse backing up the fact that he's going to be there forever. Just like the last verse said, he's our God forever and ever. That's another verse kind of continuing on with that. The next thing that really jumped out at me, where it says, "And satisfy thy soul in drought." Okay? How many in here knows how it feels to be satisfied over something? I know probably each and every one of us do. Whether it be when we've accomplished something with our job, the satisfaction of knowing we finished it, or the satisfaction of getting bills paid off, or whatever it is, the satisfaction you have that God gives you when you know you're where you're supposed to be. You know He's guided you, and you know that what He's telling you to do, and you're doing it. That satisfaction is just unspeakable. It's just a simple word. I mean, that's the only way I know to explain it. You're just satisfied. The satisfaction of serving God. The next biggest thing I see, it goes on down in the verse there, and it says, "And thou shalt be like a watered garden." Well, we all know how it is to raise a garden or any kind of plants, vegetables, or whatever. And they've gone a little while, not necessarily a drought, but they've got dry. I looked at that as us, as a Christian. Sometimes we get dry. Sometimes we tend to just sit back and not do everything like we're supposed to be doing, and we kind of start getting dry. Well, then we start seeking God again, and we start seeking His guidance again, and start saying, God, I'm missing something. I need something. And when it says He's like a watered garden, I can just see it, God pouring out on us just like water. And, we start to stand back up tall, and we start to strengthen a little bit more. And we turn, as a plant, you turn greener and just get real vibrant. And you can tell they're healthy, That's just how I looked at it, as what that means is, when it says it's like a watered garden, God pouring that guidance out on us, God pouring them blessings out on us, we're going to be able to stand tall. And people's going to see that vibrance about us, to where God has blessed us so richly that we're like that watered garden. We're like that plant that's been without water and it's just got water. And how, it just puts that glow about us, and it's talked about. People can see that in our each and every day walk. We walk around through life with our heads held down and moping and dragging our feet, look defeated. People notice that just as much as they notice if we are standing tall and we're talking about God, and we're just so proud to be able to stand up and say, this is what God's done for me. Look at all the stuff He's done for me, and it just, just that satisfaction comes into play, and people see that, and that in itself is a witness as much, in my opinion, as talking to somebody mouth to mouth is. When they see you in your everyday walk of life and they can see God on you, that's as good a witness to me as walking up and inviting somebody to church, or just saying things, just words. That glow about you is more important to me than words are. And it goes on down in the last part of the verse, and it says, "Whose waters fail not." Well, in my Bible it says, fail not is lie or deceive. So more or less, the way I take that, God's not going to fail us. We seek His guidance. That guidance He gives us, we can totally depend on, because it's not a lie, and it's not going to deceive us. It's going to fail us not. So we can totally trust it, just like everything else that God has. So more or less the way I looked at that is God is telling Casey, for instance, "Casey, I need you to go to Nicaragua for a month." Now, whether Casey's going to listen and go or not, that's up to Casey. But if that's truly coming from God, Casey can trust that that's not a lie, that that's not just some kind of fluke. That's something that he needs to do, because it says plainly that He will fail not. So He's going to provide for Casey to do do that. If that's what he's leading Casey to do, if that's where he's guiding Casey, then he's going to provide a way for his family to be protected and fed and everything while he's gone. He's going to protect Casey and provide for him while he's there. And he's going to bless for it. That's just the way I broke it down, and the way I feel God showed it to me was, I'm not going to fail you, plain and simple. And whatever I'm telling you to do, you can trust me, I'm not going to fail you. Okay. Next thing, and the way I kind of broke all this down, what I just went through, and seeking God and his guidance and everything. In order for us to follow God's guidance, we must first be looking for it. We must be seeking it. It's like I said, a lot of times we put all this other stuff in our way, but, we got to reach a point in our Christian life to where we're going to sit back and say, okay, God, which way do you want me to go? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? We've all got to reach that point. And in the book of Matthew, I found a verse here that I felt kind of went along with what I'm saying. Excuse me. It says Matthew chapter 7. And we're all pretty familiar with these couple verses here, but I thought it tied in well with what I'm trying to talk about today. In verse 7, in Matthew chapter 7, it says, ask, and it shall be given unto you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Well, both of those verses right there, verse 7 has the word seek, verse 8 has the word seeketh, both of them meaning the same thing. Seeking God's guidance, just like I was talking about. That's a verse to me. It backs it up and confirms that we should be seeking God's guidance each and every day in everything we do. I know we all fail at it, but that's what we should be doing. I believe God sitting back. I pictured this vision in my head when I was looking at this. He's sitting there with open arms looking at each and every individual person, just waiting on us to look at him and say, God, what do you want me to do? Just tell me, Lord. He's just sitting there, just with his arms held out, thinking in his mind, this is how I pictured it. Just ask me, son, and I'll tell you what to do. Or ask me, daughter, and I'll tell you which way to go. And so many times we try to find that guidance in other avenues instead of going to God. So we need to try to keep that in mind. When we're making decisions in life, we need to seek God first. And look for his guidance. The next thing is, once we have come in our mind that we know we need to seek God for his guidance, and we are seeking God for his guidance, well, God's going to give us guidance. Whether we like the type of guidance he gives us or not, it's another story. Then we have to follow God's guidance. And that's where the flesh, the human, comes in. The spirit's wanting to follow God, but the flesh is not. So that's where a choice comes in. That's where God has given us a freedom of choice. And it's once we've done this, and he's laid the path out for us to follow, we have to choose then whether we're going to. In the book of Ephesians, let's see if I can find this. Y'all can turn if you want to. If you don't have to. It's whatever you want to do. I had several verses. It's one simple little verse. In chapter 5, this verse 1, and it says, be ye therefore followers of God as dear children. Plain and simple. Be ye their followers. So in other words, once we've decided we're going to seek him and he's laid it out for us, then we are to follow him. I've got just a couple more things, just a few more verses, and I'll be done. I got another verse, and it's a few more verses. It's about 3 verses in the book of Proverbs, and that's to be the last book I'm turning to. Yep. It's going to be chapter 8.
Hang on for a minute.
And the way I looked at it, this right here just kind of sums up everything I've just said, and breaks it down to our instruction from God, what we should do. I'm going to start reading in chapter 8, verse 32. it says, "Now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction, and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the post of my doors. For whosoever findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord." You know, to me that broke it down in just a few simple verses out of what I've just talked about. Seeking God, looking for His instruction, refusing it not, listening to it, just waiting on God, looking for God, watching for what He's going to tell us to do, and then actually following Him and doing it. That's pretty much what I've got today. I know it's kind of short and sweet, I guess you could say, and maybe a little jumped around, but bottom line, I felt that God was telling me that we needed to, maybe it's just for me, but seek His guidance every day, and then do our best and pray to follow His guidance each and every day. And we'll receive blessings from it like I believe we've never had before. And I think that pertains to us as individuals, and at this point in time, I believe it pertains to us as a church. You know, we're at that point as a church that we need to be seeking God's guidance. And that's what we've got to do. And I think once He actually shows us the way, if we don't follow, I think there'll be some bad times at Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. But I believe He's going to show us a way. And when He does, I think it's up to us to make that decision. Okay, God, this is what you want us to do. This is when we're going to do it. You know. But I'm done. Thank you for your time. Hope somebody got something out of it. Casey, will you dismiss us?